All right, so let's start with the individuals. We are told here that the individuals used to collect data were healthy adults, and that this is a sample of 44 healthy adults. The main variable, the response variable that is recorded for each of the individuals in the study is the amount of cookies eaten at snack, so snack intake, a quantitative variable recorded in grams. You can also consider the distraction condition, whether the lunch was eaten with or without distraction, as a variable, an explanatory variable that is categorical. The design of the study is clearly experimental because the participants did not choose of their own accord to eat with or without a distraction. This was imposed by the experimenter. And here we see that the way the conditions were imposed is that the sample of individuals was randomly assigned to the conditions where each person was tested under only one condition. So the assignment of the individuals to the conditions was done completely at random, and that's a completely randomized experimental design. So the first question was, how does the design help with whatever conclusions we might be able to reach? The fact that this is an experimental design will allow us to reach a causal conclusion if we find different responses for the different conditions that were imposed at random. The objective of the study was stated clearly at the top. It's to examine the effect of distraction during lunch on snack intake later on in a population of healthy adults. The study found that, on average, the individuals in the group eating with the distraction ended up eating more cookies than the individuals eating lunch without the distraction. So what can we conclude from that? Very importantly, the distraction condition was assigned at random, which means that it wasn't associated with any personal choice or any environmental factor. It was just random. Therefore, this tells us that the fact that the distracted group ate more cookies on average than the non-distracted group, that difference was due to the imposed conditions, because the imposed conditions just occurred at random, not for any other reason. It's important to note that the conclusion here is indeed a causal conclusion because of the experimental nature of the study. But the effect is noticed on average. That does not mean that it would be true for every individual who eats with or without a distraction at lunch, but on average, overall, at the group level. It's also important to understand the limitations here. The conclusion applies to individuals who eat with or without a computer distraction at lunch under conditions similar to that of the study. And that means, for example, when you're given a free meal and free cookies that are lying around. So the nature of the effect and even the extent of this effect may or may not translate to a more natural situation where people buy their own food, for example. The little asterisk here around the description of the group differences being surprisingly substantial relates to something we will talk about later on in this class, which is statistical inference. And it allows us to quantify when we can determine that differences between groups that were just samples are substantial enough that they can't easily be explained by the individual to individual variations. Instead, they are more likely to reflect differences that would apply to all the individuals in corresponding populations.